I'm Jeff Tweedy from the rock band Wilco, and we are currently sitting in the Loft studio and rehearsal space that we've had for, 17 years or so.
I've read a lot about the migraines that you used to get. When did those start?
I don't really remember when they started. I think we're at around 6 years old or something. I started getting pretty serious headaches where I would vomit until I was dehydrated and, just kind of full-blown migraine experience.
When did depression start?
Who knows? I mean, I didn't really identify it until much later, but I kind of recognized that the patterns of it were existent for a long time. Probably there's a theory I have that that I don't know if it's borne out by any kind of scientific research, but I think that the depression and anxiety has some connection to the migraines for me, or maybe just the stress of those psychological mood disorders would contribute to migraines. But in some ways, I think that migraines were a way of making psychic pain visible to the people around me that weren't able to see that there was real psychic pain. I think that's a problem everyone that suffers from depression has, is that it doesn't look real, and everybody gets sad and everybody has a certain amount of depression. So people that don't really experience it as a disorder tend to think, well, why can't you just not be sad, right? So I think that throwing up 30 times in a row and being obviously in enormous pain could have had some sort of connection early on that I didn't make until later.
So you felt like your body was converting all this psychic pain into an actual
something
migraine.
That would be nurtured.
Yeah.
As opposed to being reacted to with, I'll give you something to cry about.
Right. And then when did Uncle Tupelo begin in earnest?
When Jay's brother went away to join the military, I believe.
As that began to ramp up and gain momentum, what was happening with your mental health now that you were an adult and you were a musician? You were doing the thing that you like to do.
I don't think my mental health was particularly great, but I think that I had started drinking, so there was some maladaption that's fairly common with diminishing returns, as is fairly common.
Yeah. Were you drinking just for fun, or were you trying for nerves, or what?
I think I wanted to feel normal, and it felt like I felt more normal when I drank. I'm definitely an alcoholic, and so that's like where have you been my whole life? But I was also very, very conflicted by that because I've come from a family of alcoholics, and I have a lot of anxiety about that going into it.
Because you thought that was in your future?
I'm screwed,
Was it a family, as far as you know, that were they drinking to self-medicate? Were there mental things going on?
I think that's pretty clear now.
Yeah.
I always had a theory that my dad, he drank his whole life and was always kind of determined that he was an alcoholic by everybody. And as I went through treatment and got better, I started kind of questioning whether that was an accurate description. Because he didn't have the typical diminishing returns and the catastrophic consequences that come along with advancing through the stages of alcoholism. He kept a job. He was completely reliable. But he drank 12 beers a day, wow. At least, and a case on the weekends, or so. But at some point, he went through some medical issues, and he stopped drinking, like at 81 years old. And he started having panic attacks. But he didn't have any troubles not drinking.
Wow. So how is that different than your experience with alcohol? You're not 81.
I didn't go through treatment to stop drinking, so it wasn't a particularly... So it was a similar experience.
Yeah.
It seemed fairly easy to stop. The reason I say I'm an alcoholic is it's the easiest term and most accurate to me. Like, it's just the same as saying I'm an addict. Yeah.
But you said that your father you think he might not have been an alcoholic, but you are. So what's the difference? My
dad never graduated to other substances.
How long did that take you to graduate to those?
Probably... I didn't tend to intermingle them very much. So I quit drinking when I was like 22 years old. And then not long after that, I smoked pot for a while, which I still don't think it's that serious of a drug. I think it should be taken seriously, but it's not in the same category. Somewhere after pot stopped being something I could do because it increased my anxiety. This was right around the time that my first son Spencer was conceived, and we found out I was going to be a father. It was really hard to let go of control enough to enjoy being high, and anxiety seemed to really, really take a big bite out of the enjoyment of that. But not long after that, on the road, I discovered pills, and those had the opposite effect. They had the illusion of being more in control for me. I wasn't very comfortable with oblivion. I wasn't ever really super comfortable with, even when I drank, I liked being the guy that could drink a lot and not seem drunk. At all. I was not the guy that got super, super drunk and everybody had to take care of,
Were you trying to, you enjoyed that because you were able to show that you had control?
I think I just didn't like losing control.
Yeah.
But opioids were like this warm feeling of well-being. And I honestly, that's probably the biggest drug of choice, or closest to my heart in terms of what I thought was good for me. I honestly even thought it was good for me. Like, how is this any different from taking antidepressants or something? I had like some really screwed up logic that I'm fairly decent at debating. I actually convinced a psychiatrist to prescribe me opioids at one point.
Wow, you're good.
Yeah, it was like, he was bad, I think is probably more accurate. But the combination of, I think I felt like this is what other people feel like. I have energy. I'm not panicking. I feel good and clear and warm, and I can concentrate, and that was my reaction to the first, experiences with opioids.
Had you been diagnosed with depression at this point?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
I don't really know. Probably the mid-'90s, late '90s.
Okay. And what did you do about it then? What was the course of treatment?
Some talk therapy, some medication, and some benzodiazepines for the anxiety, which is a terrible idea.
Yeah. Doesn't sound good.
Which, but they're prescribed for anxiety all the time. But I just think that that's a really diminishing return type of Band-Aid for that particular disorder.
Yeah.
And honestly, the guy that I was seeing for the longest time in terms of having a therapist, somebody to talk to, I think was criminally negligent.
How so?
He would talk me out of taking antidepressants and tell me that the opioids were okay. He'd say that the antidepressants are capping your energy, your creative energy.
Jesus.
But the opioids, I mean, you enjoy them, you have a good time, you like, you know.
Is this, are you talking about Dr. Feelgood from the Motley Crue songs? Was he your actual?
No, he wasn't able to prescribe anything. This guy was just, you know, like a social worker, or, you know, like a lot of, that's this thing that scares me about the mental health profession is there's so many different ways to just hang a shingle out and start damaging people. Mm-hmm. You know, I think it's really, really awful. I mean, I think that guy also had some sort of delusions of grandeur that he had at that time in Chicago, and I think he had some illusions that he was dealing with a celebrity client, mm-hmm. and that he was eventually going to be asked to just come on the road. In fact, he asked my manager that actually told my manager that was the only way I was really going to be okay, is if he started coming on the road with us.
That's a red flag.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like I'm like he, that, I mean, but that is so, he was just smart enough to recreate the dynamics in my life that were causing me my neurotic condition.
What do you mean? How is he recreating it?
Well, everybody has these relationships in their life that are dysfunctional, and they contribute to their impediments to getting healthy. Say a relationship with your mother, or blah 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 blah, you know, whatever. For somebody in that position to see somebody vulnerable, identify what those dynamics are, and then recreate them so that you are dependent upon them is evil. I think, and that was to me that's what happened.
Yeah. How did you get cleaned up? Like what?
I went to the hospital.
Yeah.
I actually quit taking everything. My panic disorder worked in my favor in this regard. I realized that there was something terrible happening, and I started panicking every time I put a pill in my mouth. I would panic that I'm going to die, and I'd try and make myself vomit. You know, like it was almost became impossible to take meds of any kind, and including antidepressants and things that might have been helping me to some degree. So I was able to do that. I was able to stop taking pills, and about 5 weeks after that, my brain chemistry had crashed severely to the point where I was panicking 24 hours a day, just like walking around the park. I had lost 35 pounds. And this guy that I was seeing to supposedly help me, he's like therapist, he made this suggestion that he was going to have to go on the road with me since I was in this condition. And I had a moment of, you're just a fucking total asshole. You're just like, you're sickening, you know. It's just like this clear vision of who this guy was. And I couldn't drive because I was panicking too much. And I made him take me home, and he sped off after I got out of the car. And then my wife took me to the emergency room, and they did this 2 days in a row. Or like they wouldn't admit me. And then the second day I went there, they told me about a place in Chicago that has dual diagnosis treatment, which is they treat your mental health issues along with your addiction issues. And my reaction to that was, why has no one told me about this until just now? This makes so much sense. That's obviously what's been going on for fucking ever. And yes, please take me to there now.
So it was the ER that referred to you.
Yeah.
Wow. And then how long were you there?
A month.
Yeah.
And, and then a little bit of time at a halfway house to just kind of ease back into being a dad and a husband. And
did you have to sort of ease back into playing music too? Or
a
had you
little
been
bit.
playing the whole time?
A little bit. I did have a guitar at some point towards the end of my stay in the hospital. And I think I had one when I went to the halfway house, and I was playing it in the laundry room, and this older black gentleman came up to me and said, you've got something. He said, you just lack confidence. You should get out there and play for people and get some confidence, because you got something. And it was absolutely the best review I've ever gotten in my life, because it was completely unsolicited. No, it was as pure as it can get.
And a pretty good prescription for what you needed to do next.
Yeah, and it was like he had me pegged. I don't have a lot of confidence. But yeah, and I developed a relationship with the doctor who treated me in the hospital, who I still see. I still helps me maintain my meds and be a functioning human being.
Uncle Tupelo ends. Jay quits the band, and you go in different directions. There have been some people fired from Wilco over the years. Did what was happening within you, within your mental health, play a role in some of these relationships and friendships and partnerships ending?
I think that Jay Bennett leaving Wilco was, at least for me personally, was a first step towards getting healthier. And that's, I don't know if Jay, from what I know, sadly wasn't able to get the help that he needed to readjust his life to a more healthy, lifestyle. But at the time he left, it was not a healthy thing, and I was trying, to distance myself from things that I was becoming aware were not very good for me. And we offered Jay help, getting to rehab, getting himself together. He refused, or he declined at that time, and he claimed to not have any problem, like a lot of people do. And the situation was untenable. The situation always gets cast as some sort of me versus him issue. It was not. I mean, obviously there was an issue between me and him, but it was a band-wide decision, and a situation where the health of the band was at stake, not just my relationship with Jay.
We won't walk through every song you've played for clues to depression or mental illness. Are there songs that you can think of that were written about your struggles and your depression that either written during some throes of it or reflecting back on it that we could look to?
The record that was the last record I made before I went in the hospital was A Ghost Is Born. And when I got out of the hospital and we started rehearsing again for to go out and play that record. One of the things that struck me at that time was the fact that I think a lot of that record was pretty hopeful. Like it was a healthier part of me talking to the more unhealthy part of me. Like I felt, in other words, I felt good singing those songs still. I didn't feel like I had been misled by my creativity into some sort of romanticism of my condition.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually, I think, but maybe a clearer eyed version of looking at myself or my situation, my condition. So that's something I find across the board when I look at songs I've written from any period, even ones that sound really, 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 really sad. Mm-hmm. To me, I never feel like I can't taste a certain amount of hope and I sing them all. I mean, there's really no period of songs from my whole life of writing songs that I avoid. Yeah. I play Uncle Tupelo songs on the road. There's some that I just don't like as much, but there aren't periods that I've had to quarantine,
As toxic.
Yeah.
Do you consider your depression now behind you, managed with you every day? What's the status of it?
Managed. I don't think it's behind me. I expect to be confronted with challenges in dealing with it for the rest of my life. And I'm okay with that. I think there are way worse things that could happen to you in your life. Mm-hmm. And that was a pretty great revelation to me at one point. And it's like, being sad isn't really the worst thing that can happen to you. It's like kind of a part of how life works, I think people really get into trouble when they think that they get to choose their emotions and that you just, I don't know, you can stay in one emotion by choice